What if I told you that every time you break a promise to yourself, your brain is literally rewiring itself to make the next failure even easier? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled an empire while battling his own inner demons, discovered something profound about self-discipline that modern neuroscience has only recently confirmed. He wrote in his personal journal, later known as Meditations, that discipline isn't about forcing yourself, it's about understanding the enemy within. Here's what's fascinating. Your brain has two competing systems. The first is what neuroscientists call the limbic system. It's ancient, impulsive, and incredibly powerful. It wants pleasure now and runs from pain immediately. The second is your prefrontal cortex, the rational, planning part of your brain that thinks about long-term consequences. Here's the kicker. The limbic system is roughly 500 million years old, while your prefrontal cortex is only about 2 million years old. Guess which one usually wins? But here's where it gets really interesting. Stanford researcher Dr. Kelly McGonigal discovered that most people completely misunderstand what self-discipline actually is. In her groundbreaking research, she found that people who think discipline means white-knuckling through temptation actually have worse self-control than those who use what she calls strategic surrender. Let me explain this with a fascinating discovery from Japanese train operators. In the 1990s, Japan had a problem. Train conductors were making costly errors despite rigorous training. So they developed something called pointing and calling, or shisa kanko. When a conductor checks a signal, they physically point at it and say out loud, "Signal is green, proceed." This seemingly simple act reduced human errors by up to 85%. Here's why this works. It engages what neuroscientists call the embodied cognition principle. When you physically point and verbally declare your intention, you activate multiple neural pathways simultaneously: visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. Your brain literally has to process the decision 3 different ways, making it nearly impossible to act on autopilot. This is what modern psychology calls implementation intention, and it's far more powerful than willpower alone. Now, let me share the most counterintuitive part about self-discipline. Dr. Roy Baumeister's famous marshmallow experiments revealed something shocking. The children who successfully waited for the second marshmallow didn't use willpower at all. Instead, they used distraction techniques. They sang songs, played games, or simply looked away from the marshmallow. The key insight? True self-discipline isn't about fighting temptation. It's about not experiencing temptation in the first place. This brings us to what I call the environmental design principle. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day, not because he lacked creativity, but because he understood something profound about decision fatigue. Every decision you make, no matter how small, depletes the same mental energy you need for self-discipline. Jobs eliminated tiny decisions to preserve energy for big ones. Here's your practical toolkit. First, use what researchers call the circuit breaker technique. When you feel the urge to break your discipline, immediately do 3 things. Change your physical position, engage a different sense, and activate your future self. For example, if you're tempted to scroll social media instead of working, stand up and walk to a different room. Smell something pleasant like coffee or peppermint. Then visualize yourself tomorrow feeling proud that you stayed focused. Neuroscientist Dr. Antonio Damasio discovered that this sensory motor disruption literally rewires the neural pathway between trigger and response, breaking what he calls the somatic loop of bad habits. Second, use what ancient Stoics called negative visualization. Spend 2 minutes each morning imagining yourself failing at your discipline goal. Sounds backwards, right? But research from Harvard Business School proves that people who mentally rehearse failure are 40% more likely to succeed because they pre-plan solutions to obstacles. Third, implement the identity-based discipline method. Instead of saying, "I want to exercise more," say, "I am someone who moves their body daily." Dr. James Clear's research demonstrates that identity-based habits are 3 times more likely to stick because they align with your self-concept rather than fighting against it. Let me repeat this crucial point because it's the foundation of everything. Self-discipline isn't about willpower. It's about designing systems that make good choices automatic. I'm repeating this because it's the complete opposite of what most people believe, and it's the key to your success. The ancient Spartans understood this perfectly. They didn't rely on motivation or willpower to maintain their legendary discipline. Instead, they created environmental and social systems that made undisciplined behavior nearly impossible. Their entire society was designed around automatic good choices. Here's your final breakthrough insight. True self-discipline is actually self-compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff's research at the University of Texas shows that people who practice self-compassion after failures bounce back faster and maintain better long-term discipline than those who use self-criticism. When you slip up, and you will, treat yourself like you'd treat a good friend. Ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of, why am I so weak? Remember, Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire while constantly battling his own impulses. Benjamin Franklin became one of history's most accomplished individuals by focusing on one virtue at a time. Steve Jobs changed the world partly by wearing the same outfit daily. They all understood that discipline isn't about perfection, it's about intelligent design of your choices. That's it for now. Appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't already, and see you in the next video.